The howling wind swept across the vast, untamed plains as a lone Mustang galloped through the moonlit wilderness. His powerful hooves pounded against the frozen earth, his breath visible in the cold night air. But he was not alone. A pair of glowing eyes followed him from the shadows. A wolf, lean and hungry, yet something in its gaze was not just predatory. It was a strange dance of survival, where predator and prey were bound by something deeper than instinct. Neither knew that their fates were about to intertwine in a way that would change them forever. The wind carried the scent of frost and dry earth as the Mustang pounded across the rugged terrain, muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat. His ears flicked back, catching the faint rustling of something trailing him. He knew he was being watched. The wilderness was unforgiving and only the strongest endured. A flicker of movement in the shadows confirmed his suspicions. The wolf had been following him for miles, its lean frame slipping between the skeletal remains of trees and jagged rock formations. Hunger radiated from its piercing eyes, and yet, it had not attacked. The Mustang's instinct screamed at him to keep moving, to put as much distance as possible between himself and the predator lurking in the darkness. The night was eerily quiet except for the occasional whisper of wind and the rhythmic thud of hooves striking hard-packed earth. The Mustang knew the land well, every ridge, every dry riverbed, every hidden path carved by years of storms. He could outrun most dangers, but exhaustion gnawed at his limbs, slowing him down. A day without water, two without proper food, his strength was waning. The wolf, equally desperate, hesitated at the edge of the moonlit clearing where the Mustang had come to an abrupt halt. Its ribs pressed against thin skin, evidence of days spent without a meal. Normally, a single horse would be too much for a lone wolf, but desperation blurred the lines of instinct. A weakened Mustang was an opportunity. The stallion snorted, steam rising from his nostrils. He stomped the ground, muscles coiled, ready to defend himself if necessary. The wolf lowered itself, creeping forward, muscles tense beneath its matted fur. The air crackled with the unspoken language of survival, fear, hunger, wariness. A sudden sound shattered the moment. From the distant horizon came a deep, guttural howl. Not from the wolf before him, but from something larger, something more dangerous. The Mustang knew that sound. It belonged to a pack. His heart pounded. A lone wolf was dangerous, but a pack? That was death. The wolf's ears twitched, its body stiffening. It turned its head toward the distant hills where the echoes of its kind rippled through the night. For a long moment, it did not move, torn between instinct and something else, something unspoken. Then, without warning, it let out a low growl, not at the Mustang but at the darkness beyond. The stallion took an uncertain step back, puzzled by the predator's hesitation. The wolf should have joined its kind, should have relished the chance at a feast. Instead, it turned its gaze back toward him, a flicker of something strange in its sharp eyes. The ground trembled with distant movement. The pack was coming. There was no time to question, no time to think. The Mustang made a split-second decision. He bolted. The wolf, to his surprise, ran with him. Side by side, predator and prey raced through the moonlit valley, weaving between boulders and dry brush. The Mustang's powerful legs carried him with all the strength he could muster, while the wolf darted like a shadow at his flank, gliding effortlessly through the treacherous terrain. The pack was closing in. Their howls grew louder, hungry, eager. The Mustang knew they would not stop until they ran him down. He pushed harder, ignoring the burning in his chest, the fire in his legs. The wolf ran as if it understood their shared fate. One moment of hesitation, one misstep, and they would both fall. Ahead, the land sloped downward into a narrow ravine. The Mustang barely had time to process his surroundings before he realized his mistake. The cliff's edge loomed suddenly before them, jagged rock walls plunging into darkness. There was no way forward. The wolf skidded to a halt, panting heavily, eyes darting back toward the approaching danger. The Mustang turned, nostrils flaring, ears pinned back as the first shadowy figures emerged from the trees. 5, maybe 6 wolves, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Trap. The Mustang pawed the ground, heart hammering. The pack spread out, surrounding them, their growls vibrating in the night air. There would be no outrunning them now. The lone wolf stepped forward, fur bristling, a deep snarl rolling from its throat. The pack hesitated, taken aback by the defiance of one of their own. The leader, a massive, scarred beast, stepped forward, baring its teeth. The lone wolf stood its ground, refusing to yield. The Mustang tensed, muscles coiled. He did not understand the wolf's choice, did not know why it refused to abandon him, but in that moment he knew they had only one chance. The pack lunged. The Mustang reared, lashing out with his powerful hooves. A A sickening crack echoed as one wolf yelped and tumbled to the ground. The lone wolf sprang into action, teeth flashing as it met the charge head-on. Chaos erupted. The Mustang twisted, kicking, biting, shoving with all his strength. The wolf fought with a ferocity that defied its weakened state, dodging, striking, tearing into fur and flesh. The pack, though fierce, had not expected resistance like this. One by one they faltered. A final, guttural snarl from the lone wolf sent the last of the attackers retreating into the darkness. Panting, trembling, the Mustang stood amidst the aftermath. The wolf, bloodied but alive, panted beside him. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, unspoken understanding passing between them. Survivors. Not as predator and prey, but as something more. The cold night air carried the scent of blood and dust as the Mustang stood firm, muscles quivering from exhaustion. His sides heaved, his breath came in rapid bursts, but his eyes never left the wolf beside him. The predator, battered and bleeding, swayed slightly but remained standing. Around them, the wilderness had fallen eerily silent. The pack had fled, leaving only scattered footprints and the lingering echo of their snarls in the wind. The Mustang pawed at the ground, shaking off the tension coursing through his body. His instincts screamed at him to run, to put distance between himself and the creature that had, moments ago, been his fiercest adversary and unexpected ally. Yet something kept him rooted in place. The wolf, though still a predator, had fought beside him, not against him. There was no logic in it, no reason he could understand, only the undeniable truth that they had survived together. The wolf lifted its head, ears twitching as it studied the stallion. It did not growl, did not bare its fangs, only observed with tired but alert eyes. A gust of wind ruffled its matted fur, and in that brief moment, the Mustang realized how fragile the creature looked. The hunger that had once driven it to follow him still lingered in its movements, in the thinness of its frame, the way it hesitated as if deciding whether to trust or retreat. The Mustang snorted, shaking his mane before turning away. He did not gallop into the night, did not abandon the wolf as he once might have. Instead, he took slow, deliberate steps, testing the weight of his exhaustion. His legs ached, his body begged for rest, but the need to press on overruled everything. The wilderness was unkind to the weak. Behind him, soft paw steps followed. He did not turn, did not acknowledge the presence at his flank, but he knew the wolf was there. Whether it was loyalty or mere survival instinct that bound them in that moment, he could not say. He only knew that the night was still dangerous, and for now they moved as one. They traveled in silence, their path winding through uneven terrain. The Mustang led, ears pricked for any sign of lurking threats. The wolf kept to the shadows, moving with the quiet grace of a creature born to hunt. The moon overhead cast long shadows across the ground, painting the landscape in silver and black. Hours passed before the Mustang slowed his pace. His body, though strong, could no longer ignore its limits. A narrow stream carved through the valley ahead, its waters glinting in the moonlight. Relief surged through him at the sight. Water meant survival. He moved toward the edge, dipping his muzzle into the icy current, drinking deeply. The wolf hesitated a few feet away, watching intently. After a long pause, it approached cautiously, lowering its head to lap at the water, always keeping one eye on the stallion. They were not friends. They were not allies. But they were something. The Mustang stepped back, shaking off droplets that clung to his muzzle. The wolf drank its fill before retreating a few paces, lowering itself onto the ground with a weary sigh. It was too tired to run, too worn down to fight. The stallion understood. He too longed for rest. He remained standing, his instincts unwilling to let him fully surrender to sleep. The wolf curled its body into a tight coil, ears twitching at every sound but eyes slipping closed. The night passed in uneasy peace. As the first streaks of dawn broke over the horizon, the Mustang lifted his head, ears swiveling toward the distant call of a bird. The air was still, the land quiet save for the whisper of the wind through the trees. The wolf stirred, blinking against the morning light. They had survived another night. The Mustang moved first, muscles stiff but ready. He stepped carefully across the damp ground, testing his limbs before breaking into a steady walk. The wolf stretched, shaking loose the cold that clung to its fur, then fell into step beside him. The land stretched wide before them, a seemingly endless expanse of rolling hills and scattered forests. The Mustang knew the dangers still lurking in the wilderness, the threat of predators, the struggle for food, the unpredictable wrath of nature itself. He had spent his life outrunning these dangers, navigating the world alone. Yet now, as the wolf moved at his flank, he realized something had changed. The wolf should have left. The pack was gone, the hunt had failed, and the natural order dictated that they should part ways. And yet it remained. Perhaps necessity kept it close, the knowledge that scavenging from the Mustang's presence might mean survival. Or perhaps it had seen something in him, just as he had in it, an understanding, however unspoken, that neither of them truly belonged to the rigid rules of the wild. The day passed in measured silence. They moved together, not as partners, not as enemies, but as two creatures bound by something neither could name. When the Mustang grazed, the wolf waited. When the wolf paused to scent the air, the Mustang remained still. As the sun climbed higher, the land grew harsher. Dry brush crunched beneath hooves and paws, and the air grew thick with the promise of an approaching storm. The Mustang lifted his head, sensing the shift. The wind carried the distant rumble of thunder, and with it, the scent of rain. They needed shelter. The wolf, too, had caught the change. Its ears flattened, gaze scanning the horizon. The Mustang moved first, instinct guiding him toward the rocky outcroppings that loomed in the distance. The wolf followed without hesitation. As they neared, the wind howled through the jagged stone, carrying the storm's fury with it. Rain began to fall in cold, heavy drops, darkening the earth beneath their feet. The Mustang pressed forward, his stride unfaltering until he found what he sought, a shallow cave nestled between towering boulders, just large enough for them both. He stepped inside, shaking off the dampness clinging to his coat. The wolf hesitated at the entrance, peering inside as if weighing the decision. Then, without a sound, it slipped in after him. Thunder cracked across the sky, shaking the ground beneath them. The storm raged outside, rain hammering against stone, but within the shelter of the cave they remained dry, safe. The Mustang lowered himself onto the ground, stretching his weary legs. The wolf settled a short distance away, its body tense but no longer wary. For the first time since their paths had crossed, neither stood ready to run. The storm raged on, yet within the quiet sanctuary of the cave two creatures, meant to be enemies, found something neither had expected. Not fear. Not survival. But trust. The storm raged through the night, relentless in its fury. Wind howled against the rocky walls, carrying sheets of rain that pounded the earth outside. Flashes of lightning illuminated the cave's interior in brief, ghostly bursts, casting long shadows along the jagged stone. The Mustang lay motionless, his body tense but his mind unwilling to surrender to rest. The wolf remained curled near the entrance, ears flicking at every distant rumble, every shift in the wind. The storm's energy mirrored the tension lingering between them. They had fought together, survived side by side, yet a line still remained, an unspoken boundary dictated by instinct. The Mustang had lived his life knowing predators were to be feared, just as the wolf had been raised to see prey as a means to survive. Yet here they were, neither attacking nor fleeing, trapped together by the forces of nature. Hours passed. The rain softened, its once violent assault fading to a steady rhythm against the stone. The Mustang closed his eyes briefly, exhaustion pressing heavily on his limbs. His breath steadied, his muscles loosened. But sleep did not come. His senses remained alert, ever aware of the presence lying just a few paces away. The wolf shifted. A soft exhale, almost a sigh, broke the silence. Its body uncurled slightly, stretching out as if finally conceding to weariness. It no longer watched the Mustang with wary eyes, no longer held itself rigid with caution. It too was tired. Dawn arrived in a hush. The storm had passed, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet earth and fresh leaves. The first golden rays of light crept through the cave's entrance, casting a warm glow across the stone floor. The Mustang rose, shaking the dampness from his coat, muscles stiff but ready. The wolf lifted its head, blinking against the brightness, ears twitching as it listened to the sounds of the waking wilderness. They had survived the night. The Mustang stepped toward the entrance, his hooves clicking softly against the stone. Outside, the world glistened with the remnants of rain. Puddles reflected the pale morning sky, droplets clung to every blade of grass, and the distant call of birds signaled the return of calm. The wolf followed, slipping through the cave's opening without hesitation. It did not glance back, did not linger. It simply walked as if their time together had been nothing more than necessity. For the first time, the Mustang wondered if this was the end. He had expected the wolf to leave before. Had thought it would vanish the moment the storm broke, fading into the wilderness as easily as it had come. Yet it had remained. And now, as it padded across the damp earth, he felt something strange, a quiet pull, a reluctance to see it go. The wolf paused. It turned slightly, just enough for its golden eyes to meet his. A moment stretched between them, neither moving, neither knowing what to expect. Then without a sound the wolf took another step forward. And the Mustang followed. They traveled in silence once more, the rhythm of their movements familiar now. The land had changed after the storm. Rivers swelled, the ground softened beneath their weight, and the air carried a freshness that had not been there before. The Mustang took his time, stepping carefully, sensing the hidden dangers beneath the mud. The wolf moved with the same caution, its paws leaving faint imprints in the damp soil. Hunger gnawed at them both. The Mustang had gone too long without proper grazing, and the wolf, though resilient, carried the sharpness of starvation in its hollowed frame. Survival demanded action. The Mustang found a field first. Green shoots had pushed through the softened earth, rejuvenated by the storm's passing. He lowered his head, tearing into the fresh growth, savoring the relief it brought. The wolf sat nearby watching. Its body remained still, but its gaze flicked toward the horizon, ever vigilant. Time passed in measured bites. The Mustang ate his fill, regaining the strength lost in the days prior. When he lifted his head, he found the wolf had not moved, had not wandered. Then without hesitation, the wolf rose and disappeared into the trees. The Mustang's ears flicked, his body tensing slightly. He knew this was inevitable. The wolf was a predator, it needed meat and instinct would drive it to hunt. He should not have cared. He should not have felt the faint stir of unease in his chest. Yet he did. Minutes stretched into hours. The sun climbed higher, its warmth drying the earth, casting long shadows as the day waned. The Mustang remained near the field, grazing in slow, thoughtful motions, his mind unfocused. His ears caught the sounds of the wilderness, rustling leaves, the distant cry of a hawk, the whisper of wind through the grass. But nowhere did he hear the wolf. It was gone. The realization settled uneasily within him. He had not expected to feel its absence so acutely. They had been nothing to each other but creatures bound by chance, drawn together by the forces of nature and necessity. Yet he had grown accustomed to the steady presence at his side, the quiet understanding that had formed without words. The rustle. The Mustang lifted his head sharply, ears pricked toward the treeline. His muscles tensed, ready to flee if danger presented itself. Then, emerging from the undergrowth, the wolf returned. But it was not alone. In its jaws, it carried the remains of a fresh kill, small but enough. Its fur was ruffled, its eyes sharp, but it moved without hesitation. It did not retreat into the shadows to consume its prize. Instead, it approached, dropping the meat a few feet away before lowering itself to eat. The Mustang exhaled, watching. Understanding settled between them like the weight of an unspoken truth. The wolf had returned. The sun dipped lower, casting golden hues across the landscape. The Mustang turned his head toward the horizon, toward the path that stretched beyond the hills. The wolf lifted its gaze, meeting his for only a second. They had found something neither had sought, and neither was willing to let it go. The evening stretched across the land, casting long shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky burned with hues of amber and crimson, fading into the deepening blue of approaching night. A crisp breeze carried the scent of damp earth and the lingering memory of rain. The Mustang stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the wolf as it finished its meal. The quiet between them was no longer laced with tension but with something unspoken, something neither could name yet both understood. The wilderness demanded survival, and survival had no place for sentiment. Yet, as the wolf lifted its head, licking the remnants of blood from its muzzle, the Mustang felt the invisible thread that tethered them still holding strong. There had been opportunities for them to part, moments when instinct should have taken over, but neither had walked away. Nightfall arrived with a hush. The stars blinked awake in the vast expanse above, tiny beacons scattered across the heavens. The air carried the cool stillness that only the deepest parts of the wild knew. The Mustang shifted, muscles rippling beneath his coat as he sought a place to rest. The wolf, without invitation or hesitation, settled a short distance away, its body curled but alert, golden eyes reflecting the starlight. Sleep came gradually. The Mustang's breath evened, his ears flicking occasionally at distant sounds, but his body surrendered to exhaustion. The wolf remained still, its gaze sweeping the darkness, sensing the unseen, ever watchful. Though no words had ever passed between them, an understanding had taken root, an unspoken vow of presence, of trust. The first rays of dawn brushed against the horizon, painting the sky in delicate strokes of pale gold and lavender. The Mustang stirred, nostrils flaring as he inhaled the crisp morning air. The wolf yawned, stretching its lean body before rising to its feet. They had survived another night. The journey continued. They moved as they always had, silent but together. The land before them stretched wide, filled with unknowns, yet neither hesitated. The Mustang led with steady strides, his steps firm upon the earth, while the wolf moved effortlessly alongside, gliding through the shifting terrain with ease. Time passed in a rhythm measured only by the movement of the sun and the whispers of the wind. The Mustang grazed when needed, filling his belly with the richness of wild grass. The wolf vanished into the underbrush when hunger called, returning with a fresh kill, its presence a constant reassurance rather than a looming threat. As days blurred into nights, their movements became synchronized, a pattern as natural as the rising and setting of the sun. They navigated through valleys, crossed shallow rivers, and climbed rugged hills where the wind howled between the rocks. Their bond, forged in hardship, no longer felt unnatural. It simply was. Then the world shifted. The scent arrived first, faint but unmistakable. The Mustang stopped, nostrils flaring as he inhaled the air, deciphering the meaning behind the disturbance. The wolf stood beside him, ears pricked, body tensed. It too sensed the change. Humans. Distant but near enough for caution. The Mustang knew what humans meant. He had seen them before, their presence a force neither cruel nor kind, but always disruptive. Some chased, some captured, some left without consequence. He had evaded them all his life, never allowing their world to entangle with his own. The wolf's fur bristled. It understood danger in a different way, recognizing the unpredictable nature of men, the weapons they wielded, the way they disturbed the balance of the wild. A decision had to be made. The Mustang turned, muscles coiling, ready to retreat into the safety of the unknown. But before he could move, the sound of hooves, many hooves, thundered through the valley. Not just humans. Horses. They emerged from the distance, their forms outlined against the morning light, moving with the precision of creatures bred for command. Some carried riders, their figures draped in leather and cloth, while others ran free, their manes flowing like banners in the wind. The Mustang's heart pounded. He knew what this meant. The humans weren't just passing through. They were searching. The wolf growled, its body low, ready to vanish into the safety of the shadows, but something held it back. It did not run. It did not leave. The riders spotted them. A call rang out, sharp and clear, a signal of recognition. The Mustang did not wait. He reared, hooves slicing through the air before he turned, bolting toward the trees. The wolf sprinted beside him, their movements perfectly in sync. The chase began. The earth trembled beneath the stampede. The Mustang weaved through the trees, muscles burning with every stride. The wolf, smaller, more agile, darted between the trunks, a blur of silver and shadow. The humans pressed forward, determined. They knew the land well, maneuvering with practiced ease. Ropes dangled from their sides, threats waiting to be thrown. The Mustang pushed harder, wind tearing through his mane, his heart slamming against his ribs. He had always been fast, always been free. He would not be taken. Then, a sharp whistle. A coil of rope sliced through the air. The wolf lunged. It was not hesitation, not instinct, but something else entirely that drove it to act. Teeth snapped, a growl ripped through the air, and the rope missed its mark by mere inches. The Mustang did not stop to question. He surged forward, hooves barely touching the ground as he gained distance, the trees closing around them like guardians of the wild. The riders pulled back. The chase was over. Breathless, trembling, the Mustang slowed. His legs ached, his body drenched in sweat, but he was unbroken. The wolf, panting, eyes blazing with fierce triumph, stood beside him. They had won. The wilderness embraced them once more, folding them back into its endless expanse. The Mustang turned, his gaze meeting the wolf's. Not enemies. Not mere survivors. Something more. The horizon stretched before them, endless and untamed. Together they ran.